Welcome to the Deep Dive. We pull out the core insights from sources you're curious about. You get the key takeaways, those aha moments, without all the noise.
Exactly. Quick, useful knowledge.
So today we're looking at neurolinguistic programming, NLP.
Right. And our source is Encyclopedia NLP Deletia Nachinaishik by Alessio Roberti and Owen Fitzpatrick.
And what's interesting right off the bat is this isn't just theory, is it?
No, not at all. It's really rooted in their direct work with Richard Bandler, one of the co-creators of NLP.
So they're sharing stuff that actually changed their lives?
Precisely. That's kind of the angle. They want to pass on what worked for them.
Okay, let's get into it. The book uses this character, Joe. He's kind of meant to be.
Yeah.
Well, typical, right?
Yeah.
Facing problems lots of people face.
Yeah, very relatable. So Joe finds this leaflet 3-day course of personal freedom.
And his reaction is basically, yeah, right, total skepticism.
And you get why. I mean, his life isn't great. He hates his job, regional manager.
Difficult boss, too, right?
Oh, yeah. Plus, he's got this massive presentation coming up. Company's in trouble, stressful.
And personally.
Just broke up with his girlfriend, Lisa. His confidence is shot, can't sleep.
So personal freedom feels, well, pretty impossible to him at this point.
Definitely. But then his sister, Maria, she pushes him.
She thinks it'll actually help.
Yeah, she really believes in it. The book paints her as this inspiring person in his life, a bit like their late mother, who always believed in Joe.
Ah, so that connection, someone else's belief, it kind of plants a seed.
Exactly. Sometimes you need that external nudge when you're stuck in your own head.
Okay, so this sets up the big question we're exploring. What is the core difference between, say, traditional psychology and NLP?
Well, the book puts it like this. Traditional psych often digs into why the problem started. NLP, on the other hand, came from studying how people actually manage to change for the better.
So less why and more how.
Pretty much. It's focused on the patterns of success, the practical steps people take to improve things, moving from analysis to application.
Got it. So Joe goes. Day one. Richard Bandler starts talking about personal freedom.
But not like, having tons of money.
Right. Bandler's definition is different. It's about what? Your internal state.
Yeah, the ability to create a good feeling inside yourself, to welcome good experiences, regardless of what's happening outside.
It sounds empowering, like you have more control than you think.
That's the core idea. You have more agency over your inner world.
And how do you do that? Bandler talks about how the mind works.
Yeah.
Using the senses.
Exactly. He explains we create these internal maps of the world using pictures. Sounds like self-talk, feelings, tastes, smells.
Our five senses building our reality inside our heads.
And crucially, those internal maps, those representations, they determine how we feel and what we do.
So if you change the map.
You change the experience, you change how you feel, how you react.
And he gives a technique for this.
Yeah.
For changing the map.
Yeah, straight away. He talks about changing mental images. Got a negative feeling tied to an image?
Like Joe's boss.
Right. Make that image black and white. Shrink it down. Push it far away in your mind.
Like turning down the volume on it mentally.
Exactly. And the opposite for positive feelings, remember a great moment.
The football win Joe thinks about.
Yeah. Make that image bigger, brighter, closer. Feel it more intensely. It's like adjusting the settings on your internal experience.
So you're literally editing your own mental movies. Joe tries it with his boss.
And feels a little less irritated. Then he does the football thing and feels genuinely good. It's a simple, practical exercise.
But Joe's still skeptical, right? That inner critic voice.
Oh, yeah. He's thinking, this seems too simple, too good to be true. Which is a really common reaction, isn't it?
Totally. We all have that voice questioning things.
It shows that initial resistance to the idea that change can sometimes be, well, relatively straightforward if you have the right tools.
During a break, Joe meets some of the trainers, Alan and Ann.
Yeah, Alan. And Ann, who goes by Ann, she's interesting. A psychotherapist.
Originally Freudian.
Yeah, trained in psychoanalysis, but now involved in NLP. It kind of suggests these approaches aren't necessarily mutually exclusive.
A bridge between the old and new, maybe.
Could be. Shows that effective tools are valuable wherever they come from.
And Joe's trying to mingle, but he's awkward. He notices a woman, Sarah.
Right, described as confident. And he ends up talking to Alan, the trainer.
And Alan gives him some pretty solid advice about self-perception.
Yeah. Alan basically says, look, if you want others to like you kind of need to like yourself first.
Stop trying so hard to impress.
Exactly. Focus on how you feel, your own state, and how you impact others rather than performing for them.
And Alan challenges Joe about Sarah, doesn't he? Joe's convinced she'll shoot him down.
He is. He's already made up his mind she won't like him.
And Alan calls him out on it.
Playfully, yeah. He's like, how do you know that for sure? He points out Joe is basically directing a rejection movie in his head before anything's even happened.
We do that all the time, don't we? Pre-reject ourselves.
Constantly. We build these negative scenarios and react to them as if they're real.
Then Alan drops that line. But you don't allow the thought that reality is not the way you think about it.
Yeah.
But what you think eventually becomes your reality.
Boom. That's a core NLP idea right there. Our beliefs, our thoughts, they create the lens we see the world through.
Change the lens.
Change the view. Change your reality.
Then Bandler tells this story.
Yeah.
Really powerful. About a woman who survived the London bombings.
Yeah, and she's completely traumatized, constantly reliving it. Seeing a backpack on the tube triggers her.
The past just hijacking her present.
Totally. It shows how those traumatic memories can just dominate everything.
And Bandler's approach seems weird at first. He jokes with her, offers her a job as a bodyguard.
It seems odd, yeah. But the goal isn't to dismiss her pain, it's to interrupt the pattern.
A pattern interrupts.
Exactly. Shake her out of that overwhelming fear state, even for a second. Create an opening. The humor does that.
And then he helps her focus on after the event, when she was safe.
Right. He guides her to recall where she was after the explosion, anchoring her to a time when she knew she had survived.
So the memory gets a different emotional flavor. It's not just trauma anymore.
Precisely. It helps recontextualize it, link it to survival and safety, not just the horror.
Which leads to this exercise. The movie Rewind.
Yeah, the one where you play a bad memory forward like a movie.
And then run it backward really fast.
Yeah.
While singing a circus march or something silly.
Sounds bizarre, I know. But the idea is to scramble the neurological pathway, disrupt the emotional charge connected to that memory. Joe tries it with the Lisa breakup.
Does it work?
The book implies it lessens the sting, changes the feeling associated with it.
Another technique they mention is the magnificent square. Sounds simple.
It is, surprisingly. You just imagine standing on a colored square on the floor, and that square represents a feeling you want, like confidence.
And just imagining it can make you feel it. Joe tries it.
Yeah, and he's genuinely surprised. He stands on his imaginary confidence square and actually feels, unwavering confidence.
So you're anchoring a feeling to a specific imaginary place.
Exactly. Creating a quick access point to a desired state.
Okay, then they tackle the inner critic again. The negative self-talk.
Right. And Bandler's technique is pretty clever. He says, don't just argue with the voice, change its tone.
Make it sound ridiculous. Like Mickey Mouse or Sylvester the Cat.
Exactly. Because often it's the tone, that harsh, critical tone, that carries the real emotional weight more than the words themselves.
If your inner critic sounds like Daffy Duck, it's harder to take seriously.
Precisely. It neutralizes its power. Makes the negativity almost laughable.
And we meet Teresa, a doctor from Ireland. She used NLP for panic attacks.
Yeah, she managed her internal movies of panic. And she tells Joe, change the tone of that negative voice. Another real person finding it works.
So by the end of day one, Joe's starting to shift. He's seeing possibilities.
Definitely. He's having these aha moments. Realizing maybe he can control his thoughts and feelings more. Maybe happiness isn't just luck.
Bandler makes that point too, doesn't he? About having feelings versus making them.
Yes, that's a key distinction for him. He challenges people who say, I have depression. He'd ask them to actively do their depression for him.
Implying it's an active process, something you're constructing internally.
Right, not just a passive state you're stuck in. He's not keen on just, say, beating a cushion to release anger.
Yeah.
He wants to change the underlying pattern that creates the anger.
Interesting. And day one finishes with that driving analogy.
Yeah, don't drive looking only in the rearview mirror. Learn from the past, sure, but focus on the present and create the future you want.
Let the learning sink in overnight.
Exactly. Sleep on it.
Okay, day two. What's the focus now?
Responsibility. Specifically, taking responsibility for your beliefs.
Which is basically taking responsibility for your life.
That's the connection they make. Your beliefs are choices, conscious or not, and they shape everything. Owning them is owning your life's direction.
And the idea that problems are subjective.
Right. What's a problem for me might not be for you. It exists in our perception, our interpretation. Change the perception.
And the problem can shrink or even disappear.
Exactly. And beliefs are key here too. They either enable you or hold you back.
What you believe determines what you think is possible, especially changing yourself.
Totally. If you believe you can't change, guess what? You probably won't even try. If you believe you can, That opens doors.
It also touches on identity, right? Believing I am an anxious person means you act that way.
Yes, those I am statements are powerful. Change the belief about who you are, and your behavior often follows.
Then there's the Roger Bannister story, the Bannister effect.
Classic example. Everyone knew running a mile in under 4 minutes was impossible, physically impossible.
Until Bannister did it.
And then suddenly, boom, loads of other runners did it quite quickly afterwards. His breakthrough shattered the limiting belief for everyone.
It showed it was possible. Changed the collective reality.
Absolutely. It highlights how powerful belief is in defining our limits, or lack thereof.
Though the book is realistic, right? It acknowledges people have different natural talents.
Yeah, it's not saying anyone can become anything with zero effort. We have different aptitudes, but it is saying we can often achieve far more than we believe we can.
Like Bandler's own story about art and music.
Right. He was told as a kid he had no talent for either, and he believed it for years.
Until his wife challenged him.
Yeah, she questioned it, and he actually looked into how artists draw the process, the steps, and he learned he could do it. The limiting belief, instilled by others, had blocked him.
Shows how easily we can internalize other people's limitations for us.
Definitely. We need to question those inherited beliefs.
Then Bandler does a live demo with someone afraid of public speaking. Mark.
Yeah, right there in front of everyone, to show how quickly change can happen with these techniques. Makes it real.
What techniques does he use? Visual anchors?
Visual and auditory anchors, yeah. Creating mental images and sounds linked to the old fear, and then creating new, stronger ones linked to confidence. Rewiring the response.
Now that mapping fear thing, physically tracing it.
Yeah, identifying where you feel fear in your body, the pathway it takes, and then mentally reversing that flow. It disrupts the physical sensation.
And Joe sees this, tries a mini presentation himself, and it goes okay.
Yeah. He applies what he just saw, and it works for him, even in a small way. Shows the transferability.
But not everyone's convinced, right? There are skeptics in the room.
Of course. Fred and his friend are whispering, thinking it's nonsense, but then Ross speaks up, saying he believes it because he's seen Bandler work miracles before.
So belief plays a huge role in whether you even allow for the possibility of change.
Absolutely. Your mindset walking in makes a difference.
Alan asked that question then. What are you capable of in your peak state?
And the implied answer is powerful. Practically anything. It shifts focus to potential.
The Rosenthal study gets mentioned too, the teacher expectation effect.
Yeah, the classic study showing how teachers' beliefs about students' potential actually influenced how well those students performed.
Self-fulfilling prophecies again.
Exactly. Shows how negative programming from others can impact us, and why it's crucial to break free from those limiting beliefs others might have imposed on us.
So the advice is to actively challenge these beliefs, ask questions.
Right, like, how do I know this is true? Who told me this? Were they even right? Question the source, question the evidence.
And we see Joe actually doing this internally as he thinks about approaching Sarah again.
Yeah, he's consciously applying the tools, changing his inner voice's tone, shifting negative images, trying to reverse any fear sensations. He's practicing.
And it works. He talks to Sarah.
He does. He manages to chat with her, tries to seem less nervous than before, and they actually connect. It goes well.
A definite win for Joe. Small steps.
Absolutely. Positive reinforcement.
Okay, then there's that really out there story about Charlie, the man with schizophrenia.
Ah, yes. The hologram story. Charlie believed he was talking to the devil.
Joe Bandler
What?
creates a giant hologram of the devil.
Apparently. And used an amplified voice. The idea was to meet Charlie in his reality, but then disrupt it so profoundly.
That it shakes his certainty and opens up space for a more helpful reality.
That seems to be the logic. It's extreme, maybe even humorous in a dark way, but the goal was therapeutic disruption, to break the pattern.
The point being, you need to shift from limiting beliefs to resourceful ones, beliefs that help you.
That's the core message of day 2. Choose beliefs that empower you, that support where you want to go.
Alan talks about why people come to these seminars.
Yeah.
Different reasons, but a common thread.
Yeah, he says ultimately they're teaching an attitude, curiosity, determination, creativity, the belief you can achieve things.
A mindset of possibility.
Exactly.
And Alan shares his own story, too. He wasn't always confident.
No, he talks about feeling stuck, dissatisfied, finding NLP, working on his own limiting beliefs about intelligence and success, and turning things around. Makes it relatable.
Shows it's not just about being inherently smart.
Right. It's about applying the tools, changing the mindset.
And he reframes wasted time.
Yeah, I like that bit. He says there's no such thing. Just events that led you to realize you needed to change. And then you decided to act.
turns regrets into learning opportunities.
Exactly. More empowering.
So Joe ends day 2 feeling pretty good. Optimistic.
Yeah, he's really bought in now. He's feeling hopeful and committed to the last day. Big shift from the start.
Okay, day 3. What's the theme?
It starts with Teresa the doctor, linking health issues to dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. Mind-body connection again.
Right, reinforcing that our thoughts impact our physical well-being.
And they talk about the placebo effect, how belief itself can heal. So the focus shifts slightly, not just treating illness, but fostering a healthy attitude.
Because your mind has that much influence over your body.
It seems so. Then the focus turns to desires and goals, understanding what you really want and how controlling your thoughts and feelings helps you get there.
Aligning your inner world with your outer goals.
Precisely. Bandler gives examples of people feeling stuck. A guy convinced life is awful and wants to do nothing. And Laura, the woman with depression, feeling disconnected.
Showing how these negative states can trap you in a cycle.
Exactly. Self-reinforcing loops.
How did he help Laura?
He guided her into a relaxed state, had her access positive childhood memories, resourceful feelings, and then imagine interacting confidently in the present.
Using good past feelings to build a bridge to a better future feeling.
Yeah, accessing resources she already had inside her to visualize a different possibility.
Bandler makes some blunt statements too, doesn't he? About loneliness, shyness being lazy.
He does. It's provocative. His point seems to be that maintaining isolation often takes effort spent ignoring opportunities or reinforcing negative beliefs. Calling shyness lazy is definitely challenging.
Meant to shake people up, maybe.
Probably, to make them reconsider the narrative they have about those states.
Then a big focus on goals. Specifically focusing on what you do want.
Right. Not, I want to lose 10 kilos. That focuses on the negative, losing something.
Better to focus on, I want a healthy, energetic body.
Exactly. Frame it positively. Focus on the desired outcome.
And they introduce well-formed outcomes. Criteria for good goals.
Yeah, a practical checklist. 1,
Yeah.
State it positively, what you do want. 2, be specific. 3, make sure it's within your control. 4, know how you'll know when you've achieved it. What will you see, hear, feel?
A roadmap for making goals actually work.
It definitely increases the chances. It also ties into how the brain works.
You find what you look for.
Basically, yeah. Tell your brain to look for problems, it finds problems. Tell it to look for solutions for how to achieve your goal, and it starts working on that, directing your internal search engine.
Like the difference between buying a house and really imagining living in my dream home.
Perfect analogy. Connect with the feeling and the sensory details of the outcome, not just the process. Makes it more compelling.
So focus on pleasure, success, the positive outcome.
And your brain starts moving you in that direction, like setting your internal GPS.
But be realistic about control. Focus on what you can influence.
Crucial point. Don't set goals that depend entirely on other people changing or external factors you can't control. Focus your energy where it matters.
They do an exercise. Future pacing.
Yeah, working in pairs, planning the future, but really focusing on the desires, the vision, making it vivid, compelling, mentally rehearsing success.
Sarah shares her goal. Best-selling author.
Yeah, she's really enthusiastic, has a timeline, clear application of the principles.
And Joe, what's his goal?
Getting fit, muscular. He describes how it would look and feel, checks if it's really his goal, if it's controllable. He's engaging properly.
And Sarah has a similar goal. Healthier body.
Yeah, she wants to be leaner, healthier, shares her reasons, creates another connection point between them.
Alan gets some practical questions for this.
Simple but effective. What should I do more of to get there? And what should I do less of? Turns the goal into concrete actions.
Richard sums up freedom again as internal.
Yeah, creating those better internal images, bigger, brighter, more compelling, and developing helpful inner voices, mastering your internal world.
And then that killer line, disappointment requires planning.
Whoa. Yeah, that hits hard. It implies we actively participate in creating our negative feelings, maybe by setting unrealistic expectations or focusing on negative possibilities.
But the flip side is, positive emotions also require planning.
Exactly. You have agency. You can plan for joy, for success, just as easily as you might unconsciously plan for disappointment.
And this really clicks for Joe. Disappointment requires planning. Big aha moment.
It's huge. A real shift in understanding his own role in his emotional life.
And just as he's having this breakthrough, bam, text from Lisa.
Talk about timing. She wants to get back together, regrets the breakup.
Yeah, throws him completely. Real-world challenge right there.
How does he handle it?
Well, Sarah's supportive. She opens up, too, about her own struggles, job loss, writing blocks due to negative thoughts. They connect on that level.
Shared vulnerability makes the
No.
connection deeper.
Ellen gives Joe some encouragement.
Just simple, powerful words. You're smarter than you think. Reminding him to trust himself.
And they mention Laura again, the woman from earlier.
Right.
How she's doing.
Yeah, briefly. Just to say she's made huge positive changes by shifting her feelings and beliefs. Reinforces that it works long term.
And one last story about Charlie, the hologram guy.
And right. The follow-up is that he apparently became a really motivated, successful insurance salesman.
Well, seriously, after the devil hologram thing.
That's the story. Shows how radically shifting someone's perceived reality can change their entire trajectory. It's wild, but makes a point about the power of perception.
Been a reminder about valuing the present, not just chasing the future.
Yeah, enjoy what you have now. The cautionary tale of the millionaire workaholic who retired and died shortly after because he never learned to just be happy in the present.
Well, enjoy along the way, not just at the destination.
Exactly. Balance is key.
They also talk about motivation using contrast.
Right. Think about the pleasure of achieving your goal and the pain of not changing, using both sides to fuel motivation.
Avoiding pain, gaining pleasure. The two core drivers.
Yep. Tap into both.
So, the seminar wraps up. The ultimate goal is
Freedom. Freedom from limiting thoughts and feelings. The freedom to create the life you actually desire.
empowering stuff.
Very much so. Learn from the past, use the present, create the future. Action-oriented.
Alan offers ongoing support, gives Joe his card.
Yeah, encourages him to stay in touch. The learning doesn't stop here.
And Bandler's final thought. Pay me with actions.
Love that. Don't just talk about it, do it. Apply the learning. That's the real payment.
And we see Joe doing that immediately.
Yeah, he feels different, more confident. He actually throws away his cigarettes.
Wow, concrete action.
And he connects with Sarah. Easily, naturally.
They chat, laugh. Seems like a real connection.
It does. Comfortable, shared humor. Promising.
Then that little awkward moment with Ted, the guy who gave her a ride.
Huh, yeah. Joe probably assumes the worst for a second.
But it turns out Ted's just a friend. And gay.
Right. Misunderstanding quickly cleared up. And Joe handles it okay, doesn't let the awkwardness derail him. He uses his new internal skill.
Good sign. And he agrees to meet Lisa to talk.
Yeah, faces it head on, doesn't avoid the difficult conversation. Another sign of growth.
But the story ends with Sarah asking him a question.
Yeah, Lisa's hanging a bit. What does she ask? Where does it go? Suggests the journey continues.
Okay, so let's circle back. That initial question. NLP versus traditional psychology. The book's take.
It really frames NLP as being intensely focused on the how of positive change. How do we create better internal states? How do we leverage our minds, our images, sounds, feelings, beliefs to achieve personal freedom and desired outcomes?
Less about digging into the why of the problem, more about building the solution internally.
Exactly. Practical tools for transformation. We talked about a bunch of them: changing images, altering self-talk, anchoring good feelings, challenging beliefs, setting well-formed goals.
And the big takeaway for you, listening, is that these aren't just abstract ideas.
Not at all. The potential is there for you to apply these principles yourself, to gain more awareness, more control over your own thoughts and feelings.
Which ultimately gives you more control over your experiences and your life's direction.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with, kind of inspired by Alan's note to Joe. Remember the importance of people, including yourself.
What truly matters most to you.
Yeah.
And how can you actively start creating more of that in your life? Maybe using some of these ideas.
Yeah, take a moment to think about that. If this sparked your interest, the book mentioned, Энциклопедия НЛП для начинающих, has a reading list if you want to dig deeper.
Good resource.
And maybe a little challenge for you this week. Think about one limiting belief you might hold. Just one. Ask yourself, how do I know it's true? And then, what's one tiny thing you could do this week to challenge it? Just one small step. See what happens.